Jerry. We appreciate it as always.
Yeah, glad to be with you.
Let's start with this, Jerry. In watching more and more college basketball over the last few weeks, I'm left to wonder, do we really have a great team in the game this year? Do you have a team right now that you look at in all of college basketball, Jerry, and say, oh, yeah, that's the team, if I had to make a pick today for the NCAA tournament, they would be hands down my pick to win it all?
Yeah, no, I don't. On any given night, it seems like there's a team that can look really, really good. But, I don't see the consistency, and I would have no idea. I have no idea who to pick. I'm looking through the top 25. I mean, there might be 25 teams that could win it. I don't. Wow. I thought there was a lot. Like, I thought it was wide open last year. Going into the tournament, thinking, man, 10, 15 teams can win it. It seems like even more wide open this year.
And sort of as a yeah. Go ahead.
Well, one team just sticks out in my head. It's Purdue.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying I'm willing to pick them, but because I don't know who I would pick right now. But I don't know. I'm coming a little from the gut right there. But I got sort of a feeling about Purdue.
I guess one team that maybe when you look across the board sort of checks the boxes more so than everybody out there when you look at what the Boilermakers put on the floor. And, one thing I wanted to ask you about too was sort of in relation to conferences and strength of conferences and things like that we like to get caught up in. We recently completed the Big 12 SEC Challenge. The SEC coming out on top with 6 wins compared to 4 for the Big 12. Jerry, do we make too much out of these challenges, sort of like bowl season maybe in college football? Although the argument can certainly be made much more meaningful are these games in season than bowl games. But is it something we put too much stock in your opinion, or do we not maybe value them enough?
Well, I don't know. I don't have a great feel how much stock people are putting in them. I would say on a 6-4 finish, looking at conference as a whole, if you put anything into that, you're putting way too much. I mean, I think you can look at individual matchups. I don't think, so maybe you can come up, incrementally with some analysis. I'm not saying it's devoid of analysis. For example, great win by Alabama over Oklahoma, but I would expect Alabama to win that game at home. TCU losing at Vanderbilt, I think that did not bode well for TCU. So I think you can look at them individually, but to me, 2 of the better conferences and pretty even matchup. If one's conference gets slaughtered in it, then I think you make something out of it.
What about Kentucky's performance up in Morgantown?
Oh, that was significant. I thought that was extremely significant. We may look back at that as a watershed moment. I'll be honest, I thought I probably would have bet on West Virginia -10. I did not think Kentucky was going to be able to handle, just the environment and the defensive pressure. And I was proved wrong. Kevin Knox had a remarkable game, and he's had 2 remarkable games. So, every night's another night. Because if you want to hate on Kentucky or look at the negative, you can say, well, if Kevin Knox doesn't do that, then, well, he did it. So you just don't know. College basketball is so unpredictable. That's why it's so, going back to your first question, who the heck would you pick to win it? It's so difficult. Let's go back to Purdue. We might say they check the boxes, and I'm not even saying they're necessarily the best. Like I said, I was coming from the gut kind of on that one, but whatever team, they check all the boxes. That doesn't mean they're going to check them on that Thursday night or that, Saturday night. So very difficult to predict, but huge win for Kentucky. I think that's got to give them a ton of confidence. And I think some guys, like Calipari had a quote, first time he saw Hamidou Diallo take pride in his defense. When you hear quotes like that, if that's true, and that can be a difference maker. Because look out, what if that guy starts playing D every night? and what if Kevin starts really believing in his shot? That's when a team can take off.
That second half looked like peak Kentucky under Cal. It didn't just look like good Kentucky. That looked national championship
Kentucky.
Kentucky. Right.
I agree with you, because this team has not looked like Kentucky this year. And, boy, remarkably so that second half in a ridiculously tough environment to play against a ridiculously tough opponent in many ways, as far as just, tough, physical. Bobby Huggins led in the defense, although, West Virginia's definitely got some offensive issues they got to figure out. But no doubt about it. No doubt about it. That was Kentucky as we're used to thinking about Kentucky.
You talked about defense being a big part of that here locally. Let's talk Herbert Jones of Alabama,
Sure.
a part of a great recruiting class is what we're seeing sort of play out in front of us, because it hasn't just been Colin Sexton this year. John Petty has had his moments, obviously, brings a perimeter threat when he's on, at least, that can put opponents defensively in a real bind, given what Colin can do on the ball as well. But Herbert Jones is kind of evolved into this all aspects, all around player.
X-Factor
for this Alabama
guy.
team. Yeah, a glue guy, an X-Factor guy, however you want to call it. Are you surprised to see this from Herbert Jones this early on in his Alabama career, Jerry?
Maybe a little early, but I'm not surprised it's happening. Herbert, one of those guys that kind of like, what's he wanting to go by? We always called him Herbert when we were ranking him. Okay, so I want to do it proper. So Herbert was a guy. I always had that feeling, man, am I underranking this guy? Is he going to just blossom? I think he was a little new to the big AAU travel circuit scene, and with his AAU team kind of played the same sort of role. And so the numbers weren't huge, but you always had to feel he's that sleeper guy. And so not surprised, maybe a little even regret in my evaluation of him coming into college, but he has a chance to be tremendous. He's a great defender. We saw how he defended perhaps the best guard in the draft, Trey Young. I thought he did a phenomenal job on him. And he passes, he rebounds, he's starting to show more offense. He's 6'7", he's long, he screams NBA wing.
Let me ask you this with Herbert Jones. So during the evaluation process, it was more about, where he was at in his development as an offensive player. Is that right?
Well, you're always, you can, in a way, it's not all of that. But yeah, offense is what we're all going to notice first, unless someone really, really stands out defensively. But I never saw Herbert when evaluating him guard a guy like a Trey Young and make a statement. He was kind of, I've had kids that join travel team, and when you join it late, there's sort of a pecking order, and you got to work your way towards a position you really want to play. And whether it's baseball, they throw you in right field at first, or, soccer, you're going to have to work your way up the field from defender if you do have goal scoring capabilities. So you sort of follow what I'm saying. And Herbert got thrown into that situation sort of late. So I don't know that he ever really fully showed what he could do. What I heard more was from my buddy Mark Reeves, I used to scout with for years, he was telling me about Herbert as a high school player before he even came onto the travel scene, and was a very big advocate of him and sort of had this vision of him of what we're seeing now. So it's tough. It's not a combine. Everything is within context. And I think just now Herbert, and it may have been very different with his high school team, and I'm sure it was. I never saw him with his high school team, but comparing travel team ball, the highest level, EYBL on the Nike circuit, playing against a bunch of McDonald's All-Americans, guys like Colin Sexton, John Petty. He sort of got to the game a little late and was on a good team. It took a while. I don't know that he got to fully show what he's capable of doing, and I think he's beginning to do that now.
So translation, and I'm with you because I've experienced more on the girls' side, but you walk into a high-profile travel ball situation, it can be very hard to get on the ball. And that's really
sure. Yeah, he didn't get a lot of touches. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he wasn't necessarily guarding the best player on the other team. You could tell he's good. It's not easy. That's why we're always going to have guys like a Jeff Green, from back in the day.
Sure.
Who, didn't even get ranked. There's always, even as many scouts as there are out there today and as many services, and God bless it's this way. It's the way it should be. We still have stories of guys who are underrated or not rated at all who come up through the cracks, and it's very understandable how that happens.
So, Jerry Meyer, if you're an Alabama fan, what should be a reasonable expectation for how long you'll see this guy in Tuscaloosa? Is he a 2-year guy, a 3-year guy? Is he a 4-year guy, Herbert Jones?
Well, I would say be prepared for him to only be a 2-year guy. And maybe your best wish is a 3-year guy. Like he's almost good enough next year. And then he decides to come back. If it's 4 years, that probably means he took a dip, and what didn't turn out exactly how we're so optimistically right now forecasting him to be.
Is it possible,
Jerry? It would not surprise me if it's 2.
Is it possible, Jerry, that John Petty's career is longer at Alabama than Herb Jones, or do you think those two might
Well, sure, because he's got more. It's possible. It's possible. It's tough to prognosticate all this. Thing about John Petty, I think his shooting's taken a dip, but he looked good shooting the ball. It's a tough one to call. But I would say it's very possible that Herbert Jones's career is shorter because at 6'7" and those long arms and everything he can do just everywhere on the court and in every guard is so attractive right now. And if you're a guy like Petty at his size at shooting guard, you need to be like an automatic shooter. And
a maker,
yeah, shot maker. And I assume that, and that hadn't really shown yet. And it's a weird thing when you look at I'm looking at Dejon Ingram. People are talking about him being an NBA guy, and it may still very well be, but only shooting less than 20% from 3. And then I know Braxton Key had the injuries, but the dip there. It's a funny game, man. So much of it's psychological too. So much of it's getting on a roll. And I think we were going to talk about this maybe like if we could go to Grayson Allen.
Yeah. Wanted to do that. Wanted to get sort of just a sort of a bizarre career at Duke, given the way it started and where it's at now. Kind of, if you can, give us a synopsis on the Grayson Allen experience at Duke.
Well, yeah, and not that I got my finger completely on the pulse of it, but I segued to it because I think it kind of fits in with this. Another random example, I know this is at the end of his career, but remember Mitch McGary with Michigan? That stretch he had for a month where he just sort of caught magic in a bottle and was unbelievable for Michigan. And people are like, oh, my God, he's going to be incredible in the NBA. The next Chris, this, that, and the other thing. Well, I guess Christian Laettner's not a good example. It kind of turned out like that. But sometimes you just get on a roll. And so much of sports is psychological and confidence. In my opinion, Grayson Allen just said, he came off that freshman year and came through, he was on such a high, such confidence. He carried it into that sophomore year. Teams weren't quite ready. I don't think they were game planning for him, put it that way. And don't quite know him that great. So he has that, and he's got such confidence, and it's kind of his team. And there's one thing to shoot the ball when you're like, man, if I miss this, man, is coach going to take me out? And another thing to shoot the ball, man, I can shoot any shot I want. I'm never coming out, you know. And there's such a freedom there. And Grayson had that sophomore year. Then he starts tripping people and starts psychologically tripping that next year, and things start going downhill. And boy, that was a rough one. And then maybe now we're back at reality where he's just kind of like an up and down player. Some nights he's going to be really good, some nights that good. Maybe he set a way unrealistic bar for himself as a sophomore. I'll try to make this really quick. At Vanderbilt, Riley LaChance, I kind of remember his first year at Vanderbilt. Oh, who's this little wonder kid from up north? Little guy, just like all those guys at Vanderbilt in the past. Phil Cox, you know, little guys firing threes in, and teams weren't ready for him. Then the next year, man, he was a focal point of the other team's scouting report, and they start putting maybe bigger players, like you put a Herbert Jones on a Trae Young, and they took him out. And then everyone's like, what's Riley doing at Vanderbilt? You know, he should be at one of the local schools like like Belmont or Lipscomb. You know, he's in over his head in the SEC. And then now things are going really well for him. So it just happens. Some of it's the opposition, the scouting. A lot of it's your role on the team. Sometimes it's easier to be better, and then sometimes it's really more difficult to be better. And then psychology and confidence.
There's also that window and knowing when to go and when to stay, right?
Oh, man, that's like sort of the next segue, isn't it? Yeah.
Maybe for Grayson, that window was a couple of years ago. Look at Luke Kennard, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I argued. After that sophomore year for Grayson, I mean, my take was just, how the heck does it get any better?
Right.
You know, what's going to happen in the next year to make you a more attractive NBA prospect? You know, I just couldn't see it. I mean, as far as just the NBA went and making money in your draft spot, I thought it was a really poor decision. Now, you know, if you don't give a rip about all that and you just want to go to college, dude, go for it. You know, I'm not going to judge anyone's criteria, but if that was his criteria, I feel pretty safe to judge, and especially in hindsight. But I said it at the time because to me it was just kind of obvious. How could this get any better for you?
And meanwhile, his former Duke teammate, as I referenced earlier, Luke Kennard, after 2 seasons at Duke, hits his window, goes with the 12th overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft.
Yeah.
Kind of the way it goes, I guess.
Kind of ironic. Yeah. No doubt, you know.
Well,
and the other thing is, we all played sports, you know, at some level, and you don't always play the same. I mean, from game to game, from year to year, you have fluctuations, and I don't think we should be surprised by that, unless you're just like a dominant type player or just a steady Eddie. But most players are going to be up and down. There's going to be ebbs and flows, and like you said, man, if you do have a chance to move to something better, hitting that window is pretty vital.